Hey babes, my name is Nadia Sayre, and we are back for Chapter 10 of The Rebels from my special edition hardcover, mostly because it was not perfect enough to send out. And I do apologize for taking so stinking long to make a new one, but honestly, the speaker I bought to drown out background, to filter out background noises didn't work for shit, so I had to go and find a different room that's a little bit quieter. I even have a dog next to me today, but I don't think she's hopping up to say hi to anybody. Instead, she's laying on the floor asking for belly rubs. All right, let's get into it. This is The Rebels, Chapter 10. Son and Alex had decided discretion was the better part of valor and kept everyone in the dark about us. They'd put out that we were making our way along trying to find our families, which was partially true. When I came into the kitchen, the kids were sent back into the living room to get some sleep, malnutrition and hard labor having exhausted the poor tykes. Even strangers and the return of Auntie Alex weren't enough to keep them up. The other families who were living in Mary's house had come back shortly after Mary and I had finished our conversation. Sonya, in a massive effort of socializing, and one question, had managed to get the adults to start talking about their days and their efforts in the Great Endeavor, as the enemy occupation was being called by the mayor. The whole scene had a surreal look to it, lit by a single candle set in the center of the kitchen table. We were perched on a motley collection of chairs that were here only by dint of the fact that they couldn't be burned. Even the table was one of those horrible aluminum and formica creations that belonged in the 1970s. Alex, Mary, Sam, and Olivia sat close together. Then there was Mona, whose husband Dan had died in the plague, followed by Evelyn and Stephen. I idly speculated that the name for the soldiers hadn't actually come from the old kids movie, but rather him, despite what Mary said. I got the feeling, listening to him, that he was one of those pompous assholes who loved to hear his own voice. Under the circumstances, talkative people are good. Sometimes. The women are set to cleaning, Olivia said as I sat down. Everything west of Lancaster is held by Steve and those guys in the Corps. Red armbands everywhere. I'm starting to hate the color red. Just cleaning. Every single day. We work different areas, take turns in the hospital. Oh, you know that's still running? Just not for us. We're also on the west side, Stephen interrupted. We end up having to clean out the rubble. I know, cleaning is hard, but have you ever had to gather and cart concrete and wood day after day? And with the slop they feed us? Do you get in trouble from the soldiers? Alex asked Olivia, pointedly ignoring Stephen. Stephen looked irritated at having his pearls of wisdom ignored, but Alex didn't even register. I snorted softly. One man's irritation was less than a speck of dust in her eye. Comments. Leering. Olivia's eyes were haunted. I haven't heard about anything worse, but... She hesitated. We've seen women who are indentured to the Corps, as in slaves. And there's the rumors about brothels for soldiers. I don't know anything for sure, though. Sam stood abruptly and went to his wife, pulling her out of her chair and taking the seat, tugging her onto his lap. Secure in her husband's embrace, Olivia continued. Occasionally, women don't show up for work again. They could be reassigned to a different group, but there's just so much we don't know. She shrugged helplessly. That's the worst of it, not knowing. Olivia wiped tears from her cheeks and leaned her head against Sam's, fingers twisted in his shirt. Stephen filled the silence. Men are also split into gangs. I've only worked on clearing rubble, but there's other groups building fences and repairing what they can. They're very generous with their favorites. Going by the sullen tone, I didn't think he'd become one of the chosen few. Beatings are pretty common, Sam offered, and if you have pretty daughters, well, they'll use them to frighten their fathers and keep them in line. Lines deepened around his eyes and mouth. A man with a wife and kids had extra reason to worry. Olivia kissed his forehead gently. "How much longer until the fence is done?" I asked. "Yeah, subtle, right?" "Nearly finished encircling the city. After that, we'll be topping it with barbed wire. Then?" Sam shrugged. "Who knows?" "I overheard a rumor," Mona, the woman who'd just lost her husband, put in. "I heard they'll be sectioning off the city and limiting travel between places." "Great," I muttered. "You'll need to be careful," she warned us, concerned. "With the curfew, you don't want to be caught outside while it's dark." Of course the city had a curfew. We thought we'd do most of our traveling at night, but... I snorted. I'm rather bad at this whole planning thing. Like, sure, time and experience would help, but a wrong decision could end in immediate death, or worse. Still, Sam tried to lighten the mood. We're still here, aren't we? Somebody's bound to do something, come up with a plan that will actually work. I stared at the ceiling, studiously avoiding the gazes of my 3 co-conspirators. Is this guy for real? Like, sure, somebody is coming up with a plan, but the people doing the planning would get a vote of no confidence from any sane, rational human being. I sighed, glancing at the others. Sonya bit her lip and stared at the floor, and I got the uncomfortable idea that she was trying not to laugh. Alex just looked guilty. Then, to top it all off, Sam finished with, "We just need to be prepared when the moment comes." I cleared my throat to quell the hysterical laughter attempting to escape. I think Ben Franklin said it best. God helps those who help themselves. Or we could go with, all it takes for good men to succeed is for evil men to succeed is for good men to do nothing. I shut my mouth after that, afraid if I didn't stop now, I never would, and one of these relatively normal folks would turn us in for being insane. Later that night, I leaned against the post on the tiny porch in Mary's backyard, secure in the knowledge that even if patrols could see through houses, it was too damn dark to make out more than the barest silhouette of a house. I was grateful for the few minutes' respite, unused to the sounds of so many people sleeping in such a small space. As bad as the sniffles and coughs were, it was the small whimpering noises from the children that made sleep impossible. They sounded so frightened. I didn't want to know what they dreamt. The door opened with a slight whining from the hinges, but I didn't turn around. Alex probably couldn't sleep either. I almost started when the voice coming from the dark wasn't female. Couldn't sleep either?" Sam asked. "Nope." I shifted against the porch rail. "What's got you up so late?" He remained silent, blending into the night. Finally, he sighed. "Worry. I worry about my wife, my kids, even my mother-in-law, though she's the toughest person I ever met. I pray about my worries, but unfortunately, that doesn't make them go away. You and me both." In companionable silence, we went back to staring out into the night. As soon as the sun lit the sky the next morning, we were ready to move out. We discovered that fencing work crews did leave their houses before dawn, but only with an armed escort. As Sam pulled on his jacket, Olivia gave him a kiss, as if he were headed to a normal day at work. Only the tension around her eyes and mouth gave away her fears. "I wish we could leave this place," she murmured after the men had left. "I wish—" Her voice broke, eyes reddened by unshed tears. Screwing up my courage, why was breaking into a guarded area less scary than talking to a person? I asked her if I could have a word. She led the way to the backyard, where I'd just had a conversation with her husband a few hours before. "What do you think of Alex?" I asked once we were alone. "Does she seem stable to you, or is she likely to, explode?" Olivia looked troubled. "I have no idea. She's barely speaking. Did she say you and She did say you and your cousin saved her life, but she didn't sound particularly happy about it. She also said you were doing your best, and you're her best chance for revenge." "Wonderful," I mumbled. "We're gonna die." "Mom told me about Dylan and everything, but how are you supposed to help her get revenge? I thought you were looking for your families." I gave her my best innocent look. Going by her disconcerted expression, I was failing miserably. What do you mean? We're just, looking around, trying to find our families. Not, sure where she got the revenge idea?" I shrugged, acknowledging that I'd failed that one miserably. "Listen, she was going crazy sitting in one place, moving around, feeling like she's doing something has really improved her mood." "Improved her mood?" Olivia's brown eyes, so like her mother's, blazed. "You're telling me you think she's doing better? She's not! She's an angry mess who's talking suicide." "Yep. Believe it or not, that's actually a step up." I left Olivia staring after me with her mouth open. Before we left, we took a look at a city map Mary produced where she had marked out the boundaries that she knew about. "Right," I said once we were on the porch. "We try to stick together. If anybody gets lost, we all go to the capital. Most importantly, don't get dead." "Yes, Mother," Alex and Sonya chorused. "I hate you. Let's go." It was surprisingly easygoing at first. There were enough people wandering around that we didn't stand out as long as we kept our heads down and tried to look depressed. That wasn't difficult. My stomach gurgled and reminded me that the portion sizes in this town weren't big enough to feed a mouse, much less an active girl. First chance we got, we ducked between buildings and had a snack. It wasn't Aunt Rose's strawberry and rhubarb pie, but it temporarily shut my gut up. Walking through the streets had an objective fascination. All our media was about America and American soldiers occupying other countries. We'd never seen it before from the other side. It was interesting being the occupied rather than the occupier. The only difference was that the faces and skin colors were different. Alex's fingers twitched constantly, eyes darting around trying to keep every soldier and asshole in a red armband in sight. "Listen," I muttered through clenched teeth. "Either you keep your hands a hell of a lot stiller, or you're walking in the middle and we're all holding hands." Sonya looked untroubled by thoughts of revenge or useless philosophy, but her eyes never stopped moving, cataloging the soldiers and their weapons. If I knew her, she had her eye on something. We pushed closer together to get past a group of Corps guys loitering in the middle of the road, swaggering and shoving those who got too close. Think high school bullies with fewer brains and less muscle, but larger numbers. "It might fit," Sonya mumbled to herself, so low I thought I'd imagined it. Then I saw her look down, assessing the length of her jacket, back up to a rifle, down again, her hands opening, fingers spread wide as she touched thumbs and did some mental math. A sad shake of her head gave me her answer, but the acquisitive gleam in her eyes stayed put. As we bunched, I slid a step to the outside, putting myself between Alex and the assholes. "Hey!" my moronic brain jumped in. "What a great name to call them!" I lowered my head and scratched my cheek to hide a snigger. Running the gauntlet past the Corps wasn't too bad. Some catcalls, a shove, and me clutching Alex to make sure our headstones didn't have today's date. All in all, not a whole lot different from walking down the street in LA when I visited it with my cousin Faith a couple years ago. A turn and a short walk down another street whose name I didn't even bother to look at, and suddenly Alex lunged forward. Only sheer reflex allowed me to snag her collar and stop her. She snarled in frustrated rage and tried to break free. I looked up from the hellcat I'd grabbed, down a cul-de-sac, trying to see what set her off. I saw a group of soldiers. One of them was pushing around a middle-aged couple, laughing at the man's futile attempt to protect his wife. The soldier, Steve, knocked the man's legs out from under him. Alex tried charging again, nearly wrenching my arm out of the damn socket before I could haul her back. It took me and Son to muscle her out of sight, into a mercifully unoccupied building that had been stripped of anything burnable. We charged right through to the back with our cursing, struggling bundle, not even giving her time to yell. We slammed her into a wall, leaning heavily on her back to keep her still. "Will you?" I clamped a hand over her mouth to muffle her shouts and twisted awkwardly to look outside. "Shut up! Steve's leaving! Son of a bitch!" I snatched my hand away before Alex could bite me again. "You bitch!" Alex rasped, still pinned against the wall. "You fucking left them there! How could you?" "We're supposed to do something! In this entire fucking city, we're supposed to do something! Let me go! I'll do it myself if you're too chicken shit to help them!" I leaned in close. "Idiot! Steve's already leaving! If we'd charged straight in, us and that couple would all be dead! Congratulations! We would have accomplished nothing!" "There were only like 2 soldiers!" Alex hissed. "You're just a coward!" "Alex," Sonya warned softly, "don't say something you'll regret later. And there were 5. 5 what?" Finally, Alex's struggles eased and she sagged against the wall, exhausted. "Steve," Son said, 5 soldiers that we could see." Actually, there've been a few posted here and there on taller buildings. Snipers or lookouts," I said. "There was 1, maybe 2, who would have had eyes on that little show." "Oh. Yeah. Oh. And next time, let's take a second to figure out where the bad guys are before we go running in, yeah?" After a quick check of the couple, we were off again. Once we were well away from the area, having seen both people walking slowly and a few brave souls offering assistance, Alex turned to me. "How do you notice all that in such a short time?" Sonya rolled her eyes. "Have you not listened to her at all over the last 2 months? Let me tell you this. Whatever team she's on usually wins." She turned to me abruptly. "You can play chess with Alex next time. I'm tired of losing to you." "You don't lose every time," I protested. "Yeah, I win just enough to keep me going. Thanks, bitch." "Jerk." "My original question?" Alex prompted me. "What? Oh, yeah." Then I stopped. Remembered Mary's advice from just last night. Pretend to be confident. Fake it till you make it. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly while keeping a constant eye on our surroundings. I paid attention. It's really that simple. Oh, yeah, and keep emotion out of it as much as possible. We've really covered all this back home. Remember? I just got so mad. And scared, though she'd never admit to that. Not yet. Not while she was trying to prove to us that she could do this. I sighed and let it go for now. Best to let her think about it for a bit. It took forever to walk through the city that we usually drove into once every couple of months. Alex was quiet, pensive, biting her lip and looking down frequently, but that didn't stop her from keeping pace. Son stayed 6 steps behind, watching the rear. Every once in a while, we'd duck into a narrow alley for a few minutes of respite from the wind and to see if anybody had followed us. It was almost a relief when we began turning west and hit a roadblock. Heavily armed soldiers screamed people crossing both ways. Papers were passed and examined before pedestrians were allowed through. The few vehicles were scanned and sniffer dogs were brought out. I nudged the girls and jerked my head farther up the street, and we quickly left the roadblock behind us. Down a side street, then another turn into a cul-de-sac, and we approached the end. Just some houses with blocked and locked side fences and gates. I accelerated down the walkway and had a moment of sheer panic. I'm not gonna make it, my hindbrain screamed. You moron! The roof is too low! I didn't even register grabbing the top of the fence. It was all a blur until suddenly I stood a few feet inside the yard. My cheek throbbed and I touched it tentatively. No swelling, not yet, but I was pretty sure I scraped it as I landed. A big bush sat awfully close to the fence. I must have half stabbed my face on it. Watch out for the bush on this side, I warned when the next set of hands grasped the top. Alex grunted as she pulled herself over and nearly took her eye out on the corner of the gutter. Fuck me, she swore, rebounding from the sharp blow to her forehead. I hurried forward and helped her down the rest of the way. Then Sonya came over a little slower. Her foot slipped on the up part, so I knelt down and Alex stood on my back so she could pull Son the rest of the way over. We stood in a small circle once we were safely inside the protection of the fence and just stared at each other. Well, Sonya broke the silence, there's no way we'll blend in if we keep this up. What happened to your face? She asked me. I decided it'd be fun to try to shish kebab it on that stupid bush over there. I pointed to the offending plant. Heh. What? Are we planning on standing here all day? Alex demanded. Let's keep going. Yes, ma'am. I threw out a lazy salute and then ran to the back fence and the next yard. I couldn't believe it. A month ago, we'd never have been able to do this. So what if the fences only got harder as our muscles got tired? I was still amazed at how well we were doing. And it was fun. Until I half jumped, half fell over a timber fence and found myself face to face with a little boy. He was tiny, maybe 4 or 5 years old, with adorable round cheeks ruddy with cold and a knitted cap pulled snugly over his ears. I barely managed to snatch him up and clamp a hand over his mouth before he could scream. He struggled in my arms, squirming and wriggling. In his bulky winter jacket, it was like trying to hang on to a greased eel. Alex thumped to the ground next to me, sending the kid into a fresh round of panic. Alex froze at the sight of the boy, not a muscle moving until I plopped the kid in her arms. Can you calm him down? I usually just make strange kids cry. More. Alex slowly unlocked and sat down, her grip changing until she cuddled the boy and started up a low croon. It's all right. Everything's all right. We're not going to hurt you. It's okay. When Sonya came over the fence, he barely moved, instead staring at Alex as if hypnotized. Once he was calmed, she removed her hand and asked him in the gentle, high-pitched sing-song reserved for children, "How come you're outside, sweetie? Where's your mommy?" "Mommy's talking to that man," he whispered, so quietly I leaned in to hear him. The boy became alarmed at being the center of attention from a bunch of strangers, so I wandered away, keeping an ear out. "What man?" Alex asked. "He comes here lots. He started coming in the fall." The boy looked around, proud of his knowledge. "They talk. Mommy lets me play outside when he comes." He stuck a thumb in his mouth, sucking quietly. Through the window, I could make out a coat hanging over a chair. It had a red armband on it. "Do you like the man? Is he nice?" The gentle interrogation continued. A non-committal shrug was the only answer. "What's your name?" The thumb was removed. "Corey." I motioned urgently to them and we gathered in close. "There's a red armband guy in there," I whispered. I could see the blood rising in Alex's face, but we didn't have time for it. I was willing to bet everything I owned that banging an asshole was the only way Corey's mom knew to keep them fed and in decent housing. I ran across it in a lot of books. And what are books but studies of human nature set in fantastic surroundings? "Do you want to come with us, Corey?" Alex asked the little boy. I exchanged an alarmed look with Sonya, and she began shaking her head vigorously, but the boy beat us to it. "Why?" he asked. "Mommy's here." "And I'm not supposed to talk to strangers," he finally remembered. "Alex," I hissed, "the kid's obviously well taken care of. Here, at least he has a chance." We take him with us, who knows what'll happen? Alex muttered something, and I pretended not to hear. Beat the crap outta, as she stood and set Corey on his feet, straightening his hat. Think we can trust the kid not to say anything? Son asked, worriedly looking at the boy. He's 5 at most, I said, rubbing my dripping nose. Who's gonna believe a kid that little? Good point, she conceded. The boy glared at us fiercely. I'm not lil. I'm big. Mommy said so. I held up my hands in surrender, grinning. I stand corrected. And now, I inclined my head towards the side gate. I believe it's time we were on our way. You first, Alex. I felt bad leaving the kid alone in the backyard. Sure, his mom was in the house, but still. In a way, this was worse than the couple getting terrorized in the street. At least they were old enough to process what was happening around them. This kid just got a tiny portion of the picture. Though it seemed like we'd gone miles, the truth is we'd cleared barely 2 miles in an hour and a half. Walking on sidewalks, you could get about 4 miles an hour if you were fast. Hiking over dirt trails dropped that number to 2 or 3 miles. Apparently, going over fences and through backyards lowered that number to where it took 45 minutes to go a mile. What a depressing thought. Alex kept glancing back, probably thinking of the kid. We'd talked about him briefly when we paused for a break, but even Alex had to agree. In the same circumstances, all of us would most likely have made the same decision as his mother. As evening closed in, we had to find a hiding place. We ended up spending an uncomfortable, frozen night huddled together in a run-down backyard somewhere along 16th Street. Half buried under frozen leaves, only Alex, who was in the middle, could say she was warm. Exhausted, I fell into a light sleep, waking occasionally to pull my scarf back around my nose and rub sensation back into my hands before dozing again. Old memories and new thoughts surfaced, masquerading as dreams, marching through the uncomfortable night. Aunt Rose used to work in this area, back when I was a kid. So had Papa. Rose had been closer to the Willamette River, and she'd told us stories about the riots that started when people were forced to sell out, so the government could rebuild the 99 as a proper highway. Thousands of people lost their homes and had to move from small houses to tiny apartments at exorbitant rates. If they were lucky. Auntie lost her job in the city. Her employers tried to hire more locally in an effort to support the poor already in Salem. She told us she couldn't fault them for it. After all, she had a lovely, roomy house to go back to. So she rented her extra rooms out and went back to commercial sewing. Back and forth, memories, old stories, and new experiences jumbled together in an endless nightmare until a careless elbow in the back pulled me out of it. I settled my back more firmly against the warm body behind me, clamping clammy hands between my thighs. In my hazy mind, I couldn't be sure exactly where 16th put us. Part of the maze of residential areas that appeared randomly in Salem, occasionally entire streets were bought up and redeveloped. Between the constantly changing landscape and the exclusivity of the housing within the city, my 1 to 2 visits in my lifetime didn't give me enough to draw on. Thank you so much for joining me for Chapter 10. If you enjoyed that, please like and share. And also you can find my link somewhere around here if you want to follow and stay up to date on future books and get exclusive sneak peeks and learn what's happening ahead of time. See ya.